Hello everyone, this is YLAM here. In today's video, we're going to be going over our first flight with the Mavic 2 Pro. So this is meant to be a beginner video in which people have not flown a drone yet. If you've flown a drone for quite a while, you might be able to skip this video, although you might be able to learn some tips and tricks that you want to incorporate into your own flight schedule. But for anybody who's new, definitely stick around. We're going to be going over checklists, sensor calibrations, the control surfaces or the control joysticks so that you know what's going on there, and then finally our first flight. So definitely a lot to go through. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I would recommend is to go ahead and build your own checklist. This is something that's personal to you. You definitely want to write down what's important to you. Here is my checklist. It's actually toned down from a checklist that I used to have a long time ago, which was like 30 items long, but eventually you just get tired of following it and then you don't follow it. So definitely just bring it down to the core basics of what you want. So here's mine. Back up here at the top, I always want to check my battery charge first because it's a problem that you can't solve very quickly. Obviously, if they're not charged, you're going to have to wait for it to charge. I definitely recommend that you look at your radio controller and your drone batteries the day before. After that, you definitely want to inspect your propellers just in case there's some, stress fractures or anything that looks like it could break. You definitely want to replace those because losing one propeller means the end of your drone flying. Always want to have some spare propellers available to you. Make sure that you have a left rotating one and a right rotating one. And then finally, you want to make sure that your phone's charged because you're going to be using that. And we all know that the battery charge on your phone can drain very quickly. So definitely have a battery bank with you if you're going to be using it for an extended period of time. And lastly, there's a pre-flight check, but we'll go ahead and go over those when we're ready to fly our drone. So before we get our drone into the air, let's go ahead and go over the basics of what these two joysticks actually do because it's very important. Let's go ahead and start with the right one because it's actually a little bit easier to understand. The right one will control pitch and it also control roll. So if you push forward on the controller, what it will do for the drone is it'll pitch it forward, which will make it move forward. Conversely, if you push it back, it'll go ahead and pitch backwards and then it'll move back. Now if you move roll left or right, what it'll do is it'll pitch the drone left or it'll pitch it right. So if you go ahead and move the joystick left, it'll pitch left and then it'll strafe to the left. Conversely, if you pitch it to the right, it'll go ahead and pitch it to the right. One of my recommendations when you start flying a drone is that you'll use the left joystick to go ahead and give it throttle, so it'll hover into an upward position, and then you just play around with your right joystick a little bit until you get used to the movement of the controllers. As long as you're standing directly behind the controller, you're going to have a very easy time of understanding what your drone is going to be doing. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the left joystick. The left joystick, it's going to control throttle, which is up and down, and it's going to control yaw, which is left and right. So what throttle does is exactly what it sounds like, is that if you push up, it'll spin the motors up and your drone will go up. Now if you go ahead and throttle down, what it'll do is it'll spin down the motors. Your drone will slowly start to descend. If you push it all the way down, you don't have to worry. It's not going to shut off the motors or anything, but it'll actually descend a lot quicker. Yaw is actually turning the nose. So if you yaw left, this is where the nose is. The nose is up front right here. And what it'll do is it'll actually turn the aircraft. So if you go ahead and yaw left, it'll just turn in a circle until you let go of your left yaw. Now if you yaw right, it does the inverse, of course, which is that it'll yaw to the right. Where it gets really tricky is that when you start yawing and you yaw to where the nose is pointing towards you, say you're standing right here, all of a sudden when you use the controls to the right, all of the controls are inversed because relation to the nose, everything to you is going to look like it's going to be backwards. So if you yaw left, it's actually going to move right because the nose is pointed towards you. This is the reason why when we start flying, I would always recommend that you stand, 30 to 50 feet behind your drone. Go ahead and throttle up, which will lift the drone off the air, and just play around with the right joystick until you're very comfortable with what you're doing with your drone. So now that we're done going over the basics of the controller, let's go ahead and pre-flight our drone. First thing we're going to do is check propellers. In order to do that, we're going to go ahead and unfold our Mavic 2. So the two arms go up, and then this goes down and down. Going to go ahead, split these propellers out so that we want to make sure that there's no stress fractures. All the propeller looks nice and clean. We're going to go ahead, bring the battery in, tap that, make sure that it has all 4 green bars. If it is good, then we're just going to go ahead, slide our battery right in. Make sure that it lands nicely, do another double check, make sure that all the bars are nice and green. So that is good to go. The next one, really important, remove your gimbal protector. This is something that's so easy to forget, but definitely make sure to remove this gimbal protector because it's not meant to be on when you're flying. You want your gimbal to be nice and free when it does its calibration. So definitely remember to take this off. So now that we've prepped our drone, I went ahead and plugged up my phone. So the controller is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and power it on, which is a press once, press again. This turns on the controller. I'm going to go ahead and run out to the middle of this area. I'm going to go ahead and turn my drone out there. So I have the drone out in the clearing. It's going to be in a nice wide area. I definitely recommend that for your first time. Let's go ahead and turn on our drone. 1, 2. Alrighty, it's turned on. So once you turned on your drone, what you're going to see is you're going to see it say GPS mode and it's ready to go. But before we go any further than that, there is something that I do want to talk about, which is the compass calibration. Now, in previous generation of early drones, you always had to do a compass calibration anytime you go to a new place. The newer ones are much better. It doesn't really look like you need to do it, but I do want to go through the process in case you actually see this being abnormal and you actually have to do a calibration. All you have to do is select this button. It'll ask you to start compass calibration. It'll actually give you instructions, but I'll go ahead and just very quickly go through it with you so that you know what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and walk out to my drone. And what I want to do is I want to walk directly behind my drone. You'll notice when you walk up to your drone that the back LED lights will be a solid yellow. And what you want to do is you want to close it to your chest and you just want to spin in a 360 degrees until the LEDs go green. Once it goes green, you want to point the drone straight down and go ahead and continue another 360 degrees until the green LEDs start blinking. Once it starts blinking, you have completed your compass calibration. Now, a couple of things that you definitely want to check before you take off with your drone. Number one, make sure you have a lot of GPS satellites. I would definitely recommend 8 plus. Right now we're at hovering from 10 to 11, so we're good to go. It says ready to go on GPS, so that's definitely good. And down here, you definitely want to make sure your home point is sent. In fact, the audio will tell you a home point has been sent and it's set to here. This is if you ever had to reuse your return to home, which is this button right here. If you had to use that, it would go to this point. So it's definitely very important that before you do anything else, that a home point gets recorded. So it looks like everything's good. You can see the sensor bar is reading that there's nothing directly around it. There's usually a sensor bar up top, but everything looks good. So let's go ahead and take off with our drone. For those of you who do not want to take the drone off by themselves, what you can do is you can click this button right here and it'll say take off, and you just slide it over. It'll go ahead. The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map. And it'll automatically take off for you, and it'll hover in place very low. The beeping right there is telling you that it's close to an obstacle, and it'll continue to beep unless of course you turn off the beeping. But I don't recommend it for your first time. But it's right now hovering nice and safe and easily, so that is good to hear. Now let's go ahead and go over our basic controls. Like I said, since it's already hovering nice and easily, what we can do is we can play with our right joystick. We can move it to the left, and the drone will move nice and easily to the left. We can move it to the right, and the drone will move nice and easily to the right. Now if we go ahead and center it again to where we were a second ago, we can go ahead and move it back and forward. So let's go ahead and move it back. As you can see, when I pitch backwards, it'll move nice and back. It'll also tell me I'm close to a building, so let's not go anywhere closer to that. Let's go ahead and move away. and there we go. So definitely for the first time you want to play with this drone, just work with your joystick on the right just to get comfortable with the controls. Now, if you want to go ahead and start moving around with your left joystick, I would recommend leaving this one alone, and then you can work with the yaw. So the yaw, if you look at the monitor, we'll go ahead and start moving the drone's perspective all the way around. Till it's back up front again. Now, if you're ready to land, there's actually two ways to do it again. There is the automated way, and then there is the manual way. Here is the automated way. You can go ahead and select this button. Make sure you don't press home point, but you actually press land. And then you can swipe across, and then it'll use its sensors to automatically land the drone for you. So let's go ahead and try out the manual way of taking off. So the manual way is that first you want to turn on your drone. You can do that by pressing your sticks both in. So this stick would go down and to the right. This stick would go down to the left, like so.
Take off.
This will turn on the propellers, as you can see it turning on, spinning right now. And to take off, just push your throttle all the way up, all the way up.
The home point has been updated.
Once
Please
it's
check it on the map.
In order to land the aircraft manually, all you have to do is select down, but you want to be very gentle with it. And it'll tell you when it's close to the ground, and just keep pushing down.
Landing.
And then it'll go ahead, pretty much land itself. I would recommend the automatic landing, to be honest with you, because it's just a lot easier to go with. Now, if you went ahead and started your drone so the propellers are actually rotating right now, but you don't want to take off, the simplest way to actually shut it off again is to hold the throttle down, and then it'll go ahead and shut off the motors. That is by far the safest way. Works every time. So just remember that if you want to shut off your drone while it's already while the propellers are already moving, just push straight down and the propellers will turn off.